Johnny was, I didn't agree that this gentleman, it was a famous musician, over the age of 18, spent the night at the house, and I felt protective over Lily Rose and concerned. And naturally, they were not my children. It's not my place, and I understand that. I know it's a sensitive subject, so I understand why Johnny got so upset with me. But that and the introduction of the weed with his daughter, she was so young, I just felt protective. Again, it's not my place. I understand that, and I made him really angry by weighing in on that.
Okay. Did there come a time that there was a family engagement gathering?
Well, we celebrated Thanksgiving out in London. The kids were there. There was a stint of sobriety following how sick he got on set with Paul Bettany after one of his drug binges, and he kind of just came alive again. You know, he even like played a prank on me about having like relapsed when he hadn't relapsed. You know, it was, I started to kind of feel that with the kids being around. I did think that maybe this was it. We were on a good path, meaning to sobriety, that this was it. And our life was peaceful for a minute. You know, it went back to being wonderful. There were these moments that just felt so wonderful.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
All right. I'll just sustain the objection.
Okay. Take us to the engagement. There was this engagement party, correct?
Then, yes, come Christmas of 2013, Johnny had rented this beautiful mansion in Malibu on the beach. It was gorgeous. And he brought my family out, and his family was out, obviously, in LA. And we stayed in this rented mansion, and we're all together for the holidays. And one evening, we were going to his mother's house. His mother, who you've heard about, was older and sick, but at home being cared for. And one evening we're going to have dinner, Christmas dinner there with her around the time of her birthday as well. And my best friend said, "You should."
Objection, hearsay.
Sorry.
It wasn't an effort to prove the truth of the matter, but go ahead. Go past that. What did you do?
We went to Betty Sue's house, his mother's house, and Johnny proposed in front of our families in this big, surprise. He surprised me, got down on one knee, and I cried and hugged my mother and hugged his mother, and he gave me this enormous diamond ring, and it was a nice time.
Okay. I'm going to take you into January, February 2014. You employed a woman named Kate James, is that correct?
Objection, leading.
What, if any, relationship did you have with Kate James?
She was my assistant at the time. I hired her sometime in 2012 and had as minimal contact with her as I possibly could. So.
And why is that?
She was difficult, troubled, and inconsistent. She drank on the job and stuff like that, and her behavior was
Objection, relevance.
horrible.
She's already testified. Kate James has testified, and I think the bias, we can...
All right, I'll allow that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Please describe for the jury what job responsibilities Kate had and how you communicated with her and kind of how that worked.
Objection compound.
Overruled.
Thank you.
We had minimal person-to-person interaction because I was hardly ever in LA. If I was there for a few days at a time. And Johnny and I kind of lived in this insular bubble anyway when we were together. But we would send emails, texts, and a lot of voice memos, voice notes. And, you know, if I found that if I said, Kate, you know, you left the car running with your doors open and your kids in the car on the street. You need to
Objection
move it.
hearsay.
She's not testifying, she's testifying about context.
Sustain the objection. Next question.
All right. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 209.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay grounds.
All right.
It's still hearsay. May we
Ms. Heard,
approach?
did you, may I lay the foundation first? Ms. Heard, did you communicate with Kate James by email in the ordinary course of your business?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendant's 209. Is this a communication that was between you and Kate James that was in the ordinary course of business with her as an employee?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 209. Business records exception.
Still hearsay, Your Honor.
Business record exception gets the business record, but it's hearsay. If there's hearsay involved inside the business record, there's still objection to hearsay.
Your Honor, the business records exception, I mean, I don't agree. I think that's the point that hearsay can.
Approach.
What, if any, communications did you have with Kate James about your issues with Mr. Depp?
Objection hearsay.
Your Honor, Ms. James has testified.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. Well, we can take that down, Michelle. In the February, I'm going to jump to February, March 2016. What, if any, communications did you have with Mr. Depp about a prenup?
Well, after the engagement, but before the engagement party, I started to feel like it would make you know, I know that he earned significantly more than me. He's a successful actor. I wanted to eliminate any doubt in his mind and in other people's minds. So I brought it up to him and brought it up to my therapist.
Objection, hearsay.
She's just saying that she brought it up to her therapist. She's not saying what she said. But please focus on Mr. Depp, okay?
Of course. Johnny said he would tear it up. He said, if you ever brought one up to me, or if I ever saw one, got my hands on it, I'd tear it up. Only way out of this is death. Only way out of this is death. And I thought it would, like, I didn't care either way, but I did feel that it would eliminate suspicion or doubt, and it would make things easier. And I told him over and over again, you know, are you sure? Are you sure? Maybe we should do this. And one time he said to me, he's like, kid, are you already thinking of how you're getting out of this? Are you already planning to get out of this, kid? You already planning on leaving? It was around the same time as the moving in together conversation. He accused me of having 1 foot out. And they kind of were happening around the same time. You know, I still had my apartment and we're engaged now. He was asking me to redecorate Sweetser, his main house, and kind of move into the ECB building downtown where my best friend was living at this time. While the decorations and the remodeling had been done on Sweetser. And so these conversations were kind of happening about how to build our future together and how we were going to move forward together. And I would have forgotten about the extent that we had those conversations early on in the engagement if it hadn't have been for my therapist's notes.
I'm sorry, if it hadn't been for your what?
If it hadn't been for my therapist's notes, which were
Okay.
taken at the time when I was talking to her about this and my conversations with
Objection,
Johnny.
hearsay.
Okay.
I'll sustain the
We'll move
objection.
on. Okay. Let's take it to March 2014. Did there come a time there was an engagement party?
Yes, so it was March 2014.
Please describe for the jury.
We had an engagement party, and we decided that when we did get married, we'd have a small wedding, you know, something intimate. But, you know, our lives were kind of big. His life was extremely big. And we needed to we wanted to have a bigger engagement party than a wedding, you know, and kind of get our guests in, our family, our friends, and have a big event of it, as opposed to making the wedding something that was big. And, you know, so we kind of put it on the engagement party and had a bunch of people, a lot of friends, business acquaintances, a lot of family. I had all of my family friends and my childhood friends come out for it, and I even invited my therapist. It was, you know, a big event.
Okay. And describe what took place at the engagement party.
Well, we walk in together and we took some pictures and said a few hellos, and then Johnny disappeared upstairs in, I guess it's like a coat room or something. It was in a big abandoned building that was rented out for events. And he had disappeared upstairs almost the entire party, I would say. It was kind of came down at the end when we were leaving, and came down once because he was at the time sharing drugs with my dad.
Objection. Speculation. Lack of foundation.
How do you know that he was sharing drugs with your dad?
I was there. I watched it.
Please continue.
My dad at the time was was addicted to the same thing Johnny was. And so my dad had, either my dad ran out or Johnny ran out. I can't recall which of the two ran out, but there was a you know, they needed more, of course, and had to leave the party. My dad actually left with Johnny's security to go get more drugs from
Objection
West
calls for
Hollywood.
speculation.
How do you know that?
They told me.
Hearsay.
Sustain the objection.
Okay.
And they left to go whatever, and then they came back with drugs, and everything was okay in terms of the withdrawal symptom of the, I don't know what you call it at that point, but he still stayed upstairs. And
Are you referring to Mr. Depp?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please
So
continue.
shortly after that, I tried to get Johnny to come downstairs, and he just snapped at me, just verbally told me to shut the fuck up. And I remember talking to my mom about the irony of it.
Okay.
We were at an engagement party, but that was pretty much it for the engagement party. And I went downstairs and entertained guests and smiled and took pictures and put on a face and, you know, went about my evening.
All right. I'm going to take you to May 2014, the Met Gala. Could you please tell the jury what a Met Gala is and what's involved in that?
Objection compound.
Overruled.
Met Gala is a big event, annual event, celebrity event in New York. It's a fashion event, but it's just a major red carpet event. And you have to be invited, and it's kind of a thing, you know. And we were invited that year, and I had already gone for the previous year or two, and this year we were going to go together. And at some point in the evening, we're sitting across the table, and Johnny starts asking me about this woman. He thought I was looking at this woman in a sexual way, and I kind of turned it around on him and said that exact
Objection
same.
hearsay.
All right.
It's context, Your Honor. This is
I'll
context.
sustain the objection.
Okay. Just say what Mr. Depp said then. I guess you can't tell us what you said to him.
Okay. He was accusing me of flirting, and that's how the argument started. I don't recall what other accusations I was fielding at that moment, but typically in my experience with him, it wasn't just one. So you'd make a point, and then he would go on to a different accusation. But I remember that what started it is this accusation that I had been flirting at this event. We get back to the hotel room, and Johnny shoves me and kind of grabs me by the collarbone area, like not really my neck, but top of my neck, above my collarbone, below my neck. I think at that point, when we were still in the living room, I shoved him back, but I don't really recall too many specifics. I remember he threw a bottle at me. It missed me, but it broke the chandelier. And at some point, I remember maybe this was the shove that I was talking about, but at some point, Johnny and I are in a struggle in the living room, and he kind of like shoves me down on the sofa, and I get up and I'm trying to get him off of me, and it's just stronger than me. I don't know how else to describe it. And at some point, he just whacks me in the face. And I had not, at the time, been, I think that was the first time I was like, is this a broken nose? At the time, I was unsure what that feeling was, but I suspected I had a broken nose. And other than that, I was relatively unscathed. But I remember my nose being swollen, discolored, red, and I took a picture of my face at some point and made a joke about it to my friend about how bad I looked compared to how the red
Objection
carpet.
hearsay.
All right.
It wasn't offered to prove the truth of the matter
Yes,
asserted.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Okay. Just don't say what you told a friend, okay? Okay. Let's take you to the Adderall Diaries. When did you start filming the Adderall Diaries?
Believe May. I filmed another movie in New York, March, April, May. I went straight from that movie to another movie, an independent film with James Franco. The one I had previously shot was with Christopher Walken. That's right. Okay, so I went from one to the other and saw Johnny in these, in between. Like if I got a long weekend or, I'd fly home to be with him and then fly back. It was kind of like that.
Fly back from where? Where were you filming those?
In New York.
Okay. And where was Mr. Depp at that time?
Johnny was in LA at the time and then eventually went on location for his movie, Black Mass, in Boston.
So you were in New York and Mr. Depp was in Boston at some point?
Eventually, by May 2014. That's it.
All right. And what, if any, discussions or arguments did you have with Mr. Depp relating to James Franco in that time frame of May 2014?
It's a nightmare. I wanted to do this independent film. I liked the story. I liked the character. I told him I'm not going to wear makeup in the thing.
Objection, hearsay.
Apparently,
Ms. Bitter, if you could approach, please.
so tell the jury what Mr. Depp said.
He was mad at me for taking the job with James Franco. He hated James Franco and was already accusing me of kind of secretly having a thing with him in my past since we had done Pineapple Express together.
Okay. So I'm going to take you to the Boston plane incident. We've heard about that earlier, May 24. Can you please describe for the jury what took place on May 24 relating to the plane incident?
Well, I had spoken to Johnny, he's in Boston, I'm in New York, and I spoke to him. He had already been upset with me and accused me in many arguments about not telling him about scenes that I had. If I had a kissing scene, any sort of romantic scene, and I wasn't explicit about what I was going to do, then I was accused of having withheld information and hiding it from him. So I didn't want the fight, of course. I didn't want the argument, but I had to kind of eggshell tiptoe around how to tell him when I had any sort of scene like that. And I did tell him in this occasion.
Objection, hearsay.
We need to stay with what Mr. Depp said, okay?
Okay, so he was upset with me, but he didn't sound coherent so much on the phone. He was yelling at me about how could you tell me this? How could you tell me this when I'm filming, when I have this scene that I'm doing? How could you tell me this when I'm working? Obviously, I couldn't tell him any other time because we were both filming, and I told him as soon as it was relevant, but he kept saying, how could you tell me this? How could you just tell me this? And it was like I had told him I was having an affair or something, he was that angry at me. But he kind of started to sound less connected to reality as these arguments would happen on the phone. This is in one day. Eventually, he hangs up on me in the conversation, screaming at me. I talked to his assistants. I won't say what they said, but I had conversations and felt encouraged that I could continue on with the plan, which was for me to get on the plane, go to Boston, pick him up, and we would go back to LA for his daughter's birthday. I was nervous because the conversation I had had with him, and he was so upset with me on that conversation, but I figured I assumed he had passed out and that he would have been kind of sobered up the next day, assuming that the work would mean that he felt pressured to kind of pull it together. And I get on the plane. He sent the plane, so I assumed he's not that mad at me. He's over it. We're moving on. He's sobered up. There had been a lot of talk about a sober plan, like a full detox, a full recovery, a doctor, a whole plan. There were talks of that following what had happened in London. So I was feeling like, okay, well, maybe we're here. And I get on the plane, it touches down and the SUV pulls up and it sits on the tarmac for a very long time. He knows I'm on the plane waiting for him. So I kind of started to anticipate that things weren't as I hoped, meaning that he was sober and had slept it off. And I'm sitting on the plane for a very long time waiting for him, and he finally opens the door, and I see him get out of the SUV, and I can guess by how he's moving, how he's walking. I didn't realize at the time I had already become really sensitive to these little changes because my life changed depending on what he was on. And he gets on the plane, and I just knew in every cell of my body something was wrong. And he comes straight up to me, doesn't say anything to me, but is looking at me. He's got these glasses on, and he takes them off in this kind of aggressive manner and sits down across from me, not in the usual spot. We'd kind of have our places on his plane, where you get used to sitting. And I remember I got up and moved to accommodate him getting by so he could sit in the normal seat as per usual. He didn't. He sat across from me. At some point, and I don't really remember the exact sequence of it, we take off, and at some point he's asking me what's wrong with me. What do I have? Do I have something to tell him? Do I have something to tell him? You want to talk to me about your day yesterday? And then it gets, I already know that he's drunk. I already know he's using, he reeks of weed and alcohol. I mean, his breath smelled so bad, and I could anticipate that there was a no-win situation here. There was no me talking myself out of this or talking him down or any, a lot of my arguments and my involvement in them are me trying to diffuse by explaining or
Objection, non-responsive.
She's telling the story, Your Honor.
I'll sustain an objection as part. Go ahead. Okay.
So he is asking me questions, and I know to not engage. I was polite. I made sure to answer minimal amount of, the minimal amount that I could. I moved slowly. I was trying to be polite, but not engage because there was no win. And he kept going, kept asking me. Eventually he went from, do you have something to tell me, to, you want to tell me how much you liked it? Tell me, did he slip a tongue? It got worse and worse, just more. It went from asking me about how my kissing scene went or how the sex scene went to asking me what James Franco had done in the scene, to being really explicit about my body. He was talking about he was saying really disgusting things about my body, about how I liked it, how I responded, and then he started just straight up taunting me. I know you liked it. He called me a go-getter. He called me a slut in front, and also this is happening with security and his assistants on the plane. And I remember I felt I struggle to be able to tell you how embarrassed I was, because he was speaking to me in front of people in this way, asking me if I liked it and if I was wet, and why I wasn't looking at him, and that was proof I wasn't looking at him. That was proof that I was asking for. Did I ask James to do this and this to me? And how about if he does those things to me? Insert sexually explicit descriptions of what he accused me of wanting or deserving. And I, at some point in this, get up and move to the front of the plane. And I remember getting up so slowly. I didn't want to aggravate him. I didn't want to give him any excuse to pounce on. I didn't want to upset him. I didn't want him to flip a switch and get worse. I just remember very slow movements, and I slowly get up and move to the front of the plane, and he starts throwing things at me. Ice cubes, utensils. He's calling me a go-getter, and then an embarrassment, talking about what an embarrassment I am. I don't know how many times I moved seats. I wish I did. I remember moving more than once, and Johnny came to me each time, not the other way around. He sits down in front of me at one point, and because I'm not answering him, I was looking out of the window, and he slaps my face. And his friend is in our proximity. And it didn't hurt my face. It just felt embarrassed that he would do that to me in front of people. It was the first time that anything like that had happened in front of somebody. I got up to move again, and he's just taunting me, having a laugh, screaming, and then just straight up mean, calling me names. And it was oscillating between those things. And I get up slowly again, and I just resolve to just sit the rest of the time up at the front of the plane. And as I get up, he kind of kicks the swivel chair into my hip, or kind of just hits me. And I look at him, and he asks me, what are you going to do about it? I just stared at him. I just stared at him and wanted him to see me. I wanted to get through to him. Didn't feel there was it felt like there was a blackness in his eyes. I wanted to look at him. I wanted him to see me. It didn't even feel like him. And as I'm walking away, slowly, trying not to be, I was being very deliberate about my movements, wasn't saying anything, I wasn't engaging. I am walking away from him slowly, and he tells me to hurry the fuck up. Hurry up. And I just look at him one more time, wanting to penetrate the monster to see the man that I love underneath that. The man I loved. And he tells me to hurry up again. And I pull my gaze away from him. I walk away from him. My back is turned to him, and I feel this boot in my back. He just kicked me in the back. I fell to the floor. I caught myself on the floor, and I just felt like I was looking at the floor of the plane felt like a long time. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I can't believe did he just kick me? No one said anything. No one did anything. It was like you could hear a pin drop on that plane. You could feel the tension, but no one did anything. And I just remember feeling so embarrassed. I felt so embarrassed that he could kick me to the ground in front of people. And more embarrassing, I didn't know what to do about it. I got up and I walked to the front of the plane. I sat down and I just looked out of the window. And Jerry Judge's security and my friend both kind of under their breath asked me, "Are you okay?"
Objection, hearsay.